I already filmed this first book that I have to tell you about. It's been a really slow reading month, and I could swear, like, I remember sitting down and talking about this first book. I cannot find the file anywhere. I'm pretty sure I did it in the same time that I did like a time lapse as well, which I have. Do I have the time lapse? I'm pretty sure I have the time lapse, but I remember doing the time lapse and sitting down, saying the things. And so I have no idea for the life of me where that file has gone. Today's the start of another monthly reading wrap-up vlog. It is August 11th, I think, and I have finished one book so far. That is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is not my first Rebecca Ross book. I have read A River Enchanted before and was only so-so. I was actually a little bit disappointed in that particular book. Divine Rivals was a young adult book that was a sensational new release last year. We are following a World War I, I think, inspired setting, but it's a fantasy world where it's actually gods, these two gods who have created a warring situation. Oh, there we go, better lighting. The sun has gone behind a cloud. And our two main characters are rival journalists at a newspaper who are competing for the same job, and also secretly or unbeknownst to each other, for the most part, are secret pen pals via a magical typewriter. I was not planning on reading this book because YA has not typically been working for me the last little bit. I did include it in my YA that I'm willing to give a try video. You can check that out. I make some recommendations for YA that might work for you still, and gave a list of some that I was willing to give a chance, and this included Divine Rivals. So I first started reading this on the flight back from Toronto to Copenhagen at the end of our vacation at the very start of August. So I listened to most of the audiobook, like 75% of the audiobook during that flight. It definitely has like a lot of vibes. It's very in the feels. I can see the main two characters being like a little bit gripping main characters. They're going through a lot. They wind up on the war front as war correspondents, and we see a little bit of like a glimpse into what life would be like for a war correspondent on the front lines. However, I will say that like that particular plot like theme let me down a little bit. I feel like it didn't actually go into as great of depths as I was expecting. And again, that's like the YA, you don't necessarily have as much time or go as deep into world and that stuff. But I thought because people had said such great things about it that it would really live up in that regards. And I personally didn't feel like it delivered in the extent that I was expecting. The romance, the relationship is really what kept me going here in terms of like wanting to see what happened. Overall though, it did still happen like a little bit quick for my personal preferences. Even just like when they're still communicating via the letters, it goes from being like, wait, who is this person? I thought I was writing to someone else, and now it turns out somebody different has been reading my letters and like very affronted by that. And it goes really quickly from them being like just friendly to then like, I can't wait to see you and meet you. So that just happened a little bit quickly for my preferences, and then as well as like where we get to with declarations and that kind of thing, it was still really, really fast for me. And I think that's just a product of the demographic and the subgenre that this is. Do you want out? From an overall interest and like plot perspective, I felt like my interest totally dropped off when the like relationship reached like that culmination. Like when the two people were like together, I did not care anymore at all. And I was just finishing it to finish it. And right up until like the very end, I was pretty sure that I was not going to read Ruthless Vows, the second book in this duology. I was like, you know what, this was fine, but actually I don't really care. But then the epilogue kind of got me, to be honest. It like piqued my interest again. So I feel like I'm leaving this off as being like, this was fine. I'm glad I read it to have, see what everyone was talking about. I feel a little bit reaffirmed in the fact that like YA just isn't working for me anymore. I do still have a couple books no, maybe just one more book that I said I was going to try out for YA, and that is Iron Widow eventually. So I do have pretty high hopes for that one though, to be honest. But anyway, so I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I gave this a try. It was pretty enjoyable for the most part, but it just didn't like sweep me away in the way that I'm looking for new books. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, like the structure, the depth, the quickness of relationships, like things that are just written for a younger demographic, or things that just make it young adult. And that's okay, it's just not for me anymore. But I think I will leave it instead in a place of like, you know what? If it's the right moment and Ruthless Vows becomes available at the library, because I think I do have the audiobook on hold for that as well. Like when I put this one on hold, it was a really long wait, so I put the sequel on as well, just to give myself that option. So if it becomes available and the moment strikes me, I will perhaps read it, but I also don't feel any like pressure or urgency or anything like that to pick up Ruthless Vows. If I never read it, I would be okay. So what is coming up next? What do I have on the go? I also have Those Beyond the Wall by Messiah Johnson I'm currently reading. This is a kind of like follow-up indirect sequel set in the same world as The Space Between Worlds, which I enjoyed a few years ago when I read that. It is a new release that I had my eye on. The Pomegranate Gate, I'm about 50, maybe 55% into, and that is one of my priority reads for this year, which is a portal fantasy inspired by the Spanish Inquisition. I'm also reading Legacy of the Brightwash, which is my like physical book read, and I am on track with like reading one, maybe 2 chapters a night, and that's another priority read for me as well. That one is a TBR vet, and why do I have so many books on the go? And I also have for my audiobook, The Blade itself. I am finally reading The Blade itself. I'm so excited. This is another priority read. It is a series start. In fact, it was a series start in 2023 that never became available at the library. So I'm actually doing a reading vlog for The Blade itself as well. I think I'm going to do like a reading vlog, first time reacting recap kind of a style of vlog for that. So looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you on that in the future. That is what we have. And I also have taken out from the library The Obelisk Gate, which is another priority book. I'm like really pushing ahead with my priorities. You can see, I felt like I got a little bit behind, and it like had this sense of urgency to make progress on that list, because I have like 2 other ebooks, Those Beyond the Wall and The Pomegranate Gate. I'm still reading those 2 as well, so I'm not sure that I'll get to The Obelisk Gate before it is returned to the library, but there wasn't really a hold for that one, so I'm not worried about being able to get it again. My baby is going to be turning 1 in like a week, and that is a bit emotional. But rather than wax emotional about all of that, I am instead going to update you on the single book that I have finished since I last checked in with you. I am pretty sure that I have found my Divine Rivals original footage, so in which case you saw that original footage, and if not, you saw the clip for me earlier today telling you about it. I have had multiple books on the go, and I don't know, I feel like I'm questioning whether or not that is something that works for me. In an ideal world, I have like an ebook and an audiobook that are the same book, and I can listen to them like in progress, sort of like as I go, depending on what I'm up to. But I don't always get access to both copies of something. That's not always how my reading works out. So right now I'm sort of juggling like an ebook, a physical book, and an audiobook, all different books, and it leads for like slower progress overall. But I digress. The only book that I have finished since I last checked in was Those Beyond the Wall. And let me tell you, that was a really interesting reading experience that I am not really sure what to think about. A large part of it feels like the main author emotionally venting and working through some stuff that exists in our world that they are particularly affected by. Here is what this book is about. This is the sequel to The Space Between Worlds, and it is a sequel. I was not certain of that when I originally picked this book up, like with the marketing. I knew that it was set in the same world, but I wasn't sure if it was a direct sequel. And it is. There are definitely things that happen in that first book that you like plot, world building things that you need to know. That otherwise the context for what is even happening in this book, who these people are, where do they live, what's the thing with the city, like you would lose any of that. You would lose so much of like the pre-existing world building, as well as the character interactions that are not fully explained here. There are some return characters from that first book, and their like dynamic and interplay is heavily reliant on stuff that happened in the first book, to the extent that I actually felt like I needed to reread it. I didn't, and I kind of wish that I had. I actually feel a little bit like I want to go back and read that book now to see if I can spot some of the inconsistencies that some other reviewers commented on. In The Space Between Worlds, it is this like advanced futuristic world where they have discovered the technology to be able to move between different alternate universes. However, in order to travel to a different universe, the alternate you needs to be dead in that world. And there is like this big enclosed like domed city that helps to protect them from like the atmosphere. And it's a very haves and have-nots because, oops, sorry, jiggling, because there are people that live outside of the wall. And that city is called like Ashtown. The book is actually set in Ashtown, and it deals with Ashtown culture and Ashtown main characters and Ashtown viewpoints and outlook on current issues of the time and the day. The plot here is that we're following one of the people who's like works for like the gang that runs Ashtown and like protects it. She witnesses somebody like just dying, just like not blown apart, but like eviscerated kind of. And there's a few other deaths as well around the same time. And she is like tasked by their gang leader that they call the Emperor. She is tasked by him to figure out what is going on. And we see Ashtown and we learn about Ashtown, as I was saying, like through the eyes of somebody who really, really loves it, who really cares about Ashtown, who loves the culture, who has totally drunk the Kool-Aid of life in this place. There were times when I was less into this, like maybe like the first 15-20%, I wasn't like totally in love with our main character. She's a very abrasive viewpoint and a very distinct viewpoint. So she was like a little bit like a lot rougher on the edges, let's say. And then the middle chunk I was actually really into. I feel like the plot was picking up. There was mysteries. We were learning more. To some extent, it was nice to see Ashtown through the eyes of somebody who was explaining their culture a little bit, their values and the things that were important to them, but also definitely glamorizing. That's not quite the right word. It's not glamorous. Excusing a lot of really extreme violence in a slightly uncomfortable way. You did get to see though, like, hey, we're not tough people who don't care. We're all like deeply upset by this thing, but we have to put out this front to continue to protect the city. We have to be evil bad guys who have this, this laugh where all of our grilled metal teeth are showing, and all of like, we have to pretend like we're joking about all of these people being eviscerated and dying and ha ha ha, but deep down we're hurting. And it was interesting. It was really interesting to see this. But the author has been very clearly influenced by real world events in such a way as to completely take you out of the story, and is talking about these scenarios of things that have happened in the past that are like almost word for word news reports and like reporting lines of things that have happened in our world. And it's just been like, took that situation and placed it here and used the same lines and used the same phrasing and context and all of those things. So it was very, like, it could really take you out of it. Then the messaging seemed to be that violence and like actual sacrifice was the route to go. That's what it felt like to me. I might be missing the message. That might be totally over my head. I don't know. Like, one life is worth it if it's going to make a lot of change. And that felt like a big thing to say. And then a lot of, it felt like the response to certain real world situations, because it's very obvious that we're comparing them to real world situations. It felt like the author was saying, really extreme violence. That's the way to solve this problem. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess like I don't feel great about it. I know that much. But I'm also not connected to that situation. So I don't know how to feel. It left me really confused. I read a bunch of reviews afterwards from a lot of people who were like, felt similarly, I think, and that felt more extreme. Some people who still really enjoyed it, and some people who were like, whoa, this missed the mark for me. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I might do a full review for this. I'm supposed to be doing another like individual review later this week because I am challenging myself to do more individual reviews bi-weekly, and I have not finished anything else. As you can see, I thought that I would be done something. Let's actually get into what I'm currently reading and what's coming up. So what I'm currently reading is I'm still plugging along on my physical read of Legacy of the Brightwash, not The Legacy, which I keep saying, just Legacy of the Brightwash, and I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm definitely doing at least one chapter a night. There was sometimes two for those like really short chapters, and sometimes I'll do two, so that's good. I'm like staying on track with it. I did have to pause it temporarily though because my hold for Those Beyond the Wall was going to run out, so I had to like quick pivot and like focus a lot more time on that in order to finish it in time and not lose a copy for a second time. I am listening to the audiobook for The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I'm so excited about this. And then I'm finally getting to read it. I am enjoying the audiobook, but I'm also like, this is fine. But I'm also a little bit confused. It doesn't seem as grimdark as I maybe thought it was going to be, but maybe I just haven't maybe the real hopelessness of the world has not caught up to me. Like maybe that's like a pivot late in the second half of the book. And then I'm also still reading the ebook for The Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. This slowed down for me. This is my ebook. And again, like Those Beyond the Wall was also an ebook, so it was kind of hard to juggle both of those ebooks at the same time, and it just had to do with library holds and all of that business. So I am also about like 65% of the way into that. I'm really hoping to finish that soon. This is a book inspired by the Spanish Inquisition. It is a portal fantasy where someone of the Jewish descent, they're like leaving the city when it's declared that you either have to convert to, I don't know if it's just Christianity or I assume it's Catholicism, where you have to convert or you have to leave. She's leaving and she gets separated from the pack. They're like going to catch a ship somewhere else, and she gets separated from the pack and winds up going through this portal to another world, like a different realm that is, they're calling them Magics. Reed Faye. And then meanwhile, then we're also getting the perspective of another person who is leaving the world, and his father passes away at the beginning of the book and leaves him this like mysterious book that he's like, don't ever open this, but never like lose it, you know, so mysterious. He happens to see what happens to our main character, but he doesn't also go through the portal. And he is now trying to help her grandmother, like get her back. I think that I thought I was going to be learning more about the Spanish Inquisition. Maybe that was wrong of me to think so. Either I know so little about it that I'm missing here we're telling this story, but it's like a Faye Magic story, but it's actually the Spanish Inquisition. I don't know. So I might be missing something, but again, like there was a reveal that like took us down a certain route that I was like, okay, like just not a trope, let's say, that I thought I was going to be reading about, and it's maybe like a trope that I'm like less excited about happening. There we have it. I spent way too long talking about that already for the book that I haven't even finished. So that is what I'm currently reading. I have still taken out the Obelisk Gate. I think even like I took it out again. I haven't gotten to it because again, it's an ebook. So I just like, I haven't been like successfully taking off my ebook reading. I have been really enjoying physically reading a book at night, like going to bed, keeping the lamp on, reading a chapter, and then like turning the light off and going to bed. That's been really nice, where that's how I grew up. That was what my reading used to be. And now I'm like reading from my phone under the covers. So that means that I'm reading things more slowly because I can't keep reading after the light is turned off. And I'm instead forced to sleep a good night's rest because my baby is like going through a bit of a phase where she's actually sleeping okay. So that's really nice because she's not a great sleeper. But it does mean that I'm a little bit slower on a lot of things. So maybe I have to start taking more books out from like the physical library here. That could be cool. Maybe I'd be up for that. I do have some I have physical books that I have not read yet that I would do that. I should do that before taking out different new books from the library. I recently postponed The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. Both the ebook and the audiobook are like available soon, 2 weeks, available soon kind of thing. So if it comes up, if the audiobook comes up again, I might pick that up to follow up after, like to be my audiobook after the blade itself is done. If it's the ebook, I would probably postpone it. Maybe not. Depending on where I am at in the Pomegranate Gate, I could maybe take that out. After that though, there are other books coming up like imminently on at the library, but I am also thinking about starting my Kindle Unlimited project, in which case I would cut way back on the amount of library books that I took out, and I would just like postpone, and instead read the books from my Kindle Unlimited TBR, which I made a video about. You can check that out to see all of the books that I plan to read, because I'm only going to be doing that for a temporary amount of time, theoretically, a test run as it were. And so I want to read as many of those books as I can from that and not the library, which I always have access to, and my library lets me postpone things, so that's where we're at. Okay, that is it. I anticipate that I will only finish books I've already mentioned here by the end of the month, but I will do one more check-in to like wrap up and let you know if I finished either of these books. Today's the 31st of August, and I thought I would take advantage of this work location that I'm at today. I don't normally teach out of this location, so like I work at a yoga chain, and this isn't part of the city that is at all, let's say, readily accessible to me, so I don't normally teach out of this location. It's like the wall of mirrors behind me, that's why you can see me in the window or in the mirror. Anyway, so I don't really work out of this location, but I have some friends that live nearby, and we were meeting up to like have like a little baby play date today, and then somebody reached out to see if I wanted to pick up those shifts, so I thought I would throw those in to my schedule. Why not? A little extra money today, help somebody out. So we're meeting up afterwards. My partner's bringing the baby, but I just thought like I have to film in this location. So this is actually the hot room, so if I like look a little bit sweaty and warm, it's because I am. I just taught 2 hot classes, and the room is like still cooling down a little bit. Anyway, so I will tell you about the very last book that I read, which was The Blade itself. I finished the first book in the First Law trilogy. Stay tuned for a more full recap, like a full recap of what happens, my reactions sort of to reading that book for the first time, more in-depth thoughts. So I don't want to say too much here about that book, but I will say that I did really like it. This is a story that I feel like you don't often hear like a plot synopsis, because there's really not that much that happens in the plot. It is so much more focused on introducing you to these characters and like who they are deep down, like truly who are these people. And that is where the writing is so exceptional. Like I actually thought that the book was overall very well written. It's an extremely well written book, like beautiful writing in the sentence structure and like the word choice, but also like a little bit, it doesn't shy away from the gross realities, I guess, of this world. It is a more grim world, but I actually feel like this is not like the most grim, dark book that I've ever read, in the sense like it wasn't yet truly bleak and hopeless, but you can definitely see how the societal structure is going to be playing into that. There were elements more towards like the very end of the book that felt a little bit like heavy, I guess, personally, especially pertaining to like an on-page sibling assault that was uncomfortable to read about, like from the abuser's perspective. And then it just got like a little bit gory, I guess, as well to some extent, but not, again, like not the most extreme examples of that I have ever read personally. So it's interesting. I'm very curious to see how this will continue down like in a grim, dark track. I haven't said the setup. So the setup is we are introduced to a handful of characters who are living in a world where the main focus here is the Union, and there's like rumblings of war to the north. The Northmen have recently they were more like infighting clans, and then one person has like slowly beaten down all the clans and is now declared himself king of the north, and he has aims for the Union south. Particularly, there's like a tract of land that the Union claimed at one point and he wants it back. And then there's also, as the book goes on, you also realize that there's like more rumblings of like world tension elsewhere, but we are more focused in on like the main capital city of this Union, as a few different characters work their way into being brought together. We follow Giselle, who is like a new captain within the army, and he's like a fancy boy. He's like a very, very narcissistic, self-centered guy who doesn't really care about anything, who just wants to do things like that are going to make him look better, and he is training for this swordsmanship competition, this like fencing competition. And we have Glokta, who used to be like a fancy, like his past, let's say, was Giselle. That was Giselle. Glokta's past was definitely Giselle, but he fought in a war previously with the South that was like 10 years prior, and was captured for 2 years and tortured for 2 years. So he is now like pretty heavily disabled, and he works as part of the Inquisition, which are like the secret police force sort of, who like torture people to like root out treason within the Union. And then we also get Logan, who is a previous like clansman from the north who has left King Bethed's service for reasons, and he winds up getting like brought into the like underwing of this first Magi by Bizan. Why do I always forget his name? Anyway, a first Magi. And then we also get like a Major within, like Major West. We get his perspectives. He's like a buddy of Giselle's, sort of, a past buddy of Glokta's. And we get some people who know, oh, I didn't say Logan, the Northman's Logan Ninefingers. We get some like people that he knew in the past as well. So we get like a few scattered other perspectives that we don't see quite as much. And it's just like getting to know these characters as we learn more about the world, and they like interplay towards the progression of like what's happening with this Union. I actually really liked it. I thought it was compulsively readable. I listened to the audiobook, which was astounding. It was so good, but it's weird. It's hard to pinpoint, like, other than just like how great of a character book it is, it's hard to pinpoint what made it so amazing. But again, it's like it had really great writing. It had really good storytelling, despite the fact that like not a lot happens plot-wise, but what does happen is told in such an engaging way that you feel really caught up in it. You feel like you truly know who each of these characters are by the end of it, and I'm sure we're gonna learn more. And yeah, I forgot Pharaoh. I'm not gonna do Pharaoh. But anyway, so that was The Blade itself. I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series, but I did not put the second book on hold when I put this one on hold 19 months ago. So let's just ruminate on that wait list for a moment, and while I decide how I'm going to handle that. It was an extremely slow reading month. I'm still reading. I'm like 75% of the way into The Pomegranate Gate. I am like 10-15% of the way into Legacy of the Brightwash. But it's just been a slow reading month. Yeah, so I'm currently still reading those other two books. I haven't picked up the Obelisk Gate yet. Like, it's the same books that I've mentioned this whole time. It has not been my priority. September, things are going to be a little bit different. My baby is starting daycare, so that's going to be a whole thing. They actually, in Denmark, they don't just like drop them off on the first day and leave. You do like a 2-week slow transition where like I go with her for the first little bit for like a couple hours here and there, and then like we leave together. Like, I don't leave her there by herself until it seems like it's something that she's open to. So yeah, that'll be the next couple weeks for me. Her first birthday is happening. I'm gonna be getting more into like job searching. The weather's gonna be changing probably. We'll see. So like that is August. I don't know. Weird month. But I am hoping like once daycare gets in a little bit of a groove, I'm hoping that the schedule will sort of like get into a little bit more of a groove. And I hope I keep reading. That's the plan. Keep reading, keep uploading here. I will see you guys next video. Let me know something that you read in August that you really liked or really, really hated, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.